fun.
Fredo, what's your biggest trauma?
Oh, wow. What a great way to start.
Dang.
I also don't know like how instantaneously from our end that it goes live to YouTube.
Yeah.
So-
Imagine it's just like
Yeah.
live. And then there I was, hurt, skull torn
Nah,
in half.
there's probably like 5 to 10 second delay.
Usually, when
Yeah,
I stream
hopefully.
from OBS for the youth streams, it's about 10 to 15 second delay.
Mm.
Okay.
So
I'm just excited to have, good lighting, good audio today.
that is the
one-
major win.
A wonderful backdrop here just to enjoy.
It actually looks nice. Yeah.
I'm not,
Hey, did you
I'm
ch-
not
did you
capturing
change
in my son's room.
Did you change the position of the camera again? I can't figure out.
I don't think so.
Or maybe it's just maybe the camera's flipped in reverse.
Listen, my rule, I try not to touch the technology. I try to just, click the login
Wow.
button, type in my user info.
You look
By the
so
great-
much better than normal, Fredo.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Scott. Yes.
Scott jumped in, said, "You look so much better."
Ozempic does wonders.
That's wild.
Oh,
We
man.
are
Yeah,
funding
that's
Fredo's Ozempic prescription.
Stop.
Oh,
Yeah, before we start some kind of crazy idea. And no.
No, I would if I didn't get my Apple Watch updates of every workout you did at a god awful time in the morning. I would maybe believe it, but like I said, I get these things going off 5
Yeah.
o'clock in the morning,
Mm.
and Fredo has done 500 calories worth of a workout. It's pretty intimidating. And then
Tuesday was legs, man. It was good. It was good.
Oh,
If
you
I
don't
could-
skip leg day? You do leg day?
No, I do leg day, man. By the grace of God, I do leg day as long
That
as
is-
the lower back does not
That's pretty
commit to a
impressive.
spasm. Sometimes the enemy works with a spasm, and then I'm done. So
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
I know B-Wade's never done a leg day in his life. This dude just
Yeah.
strictly upper body.
It's basically just pull-ups and push-ups every day. So
I did leg day with a friend once, a buddy of mine named Jason. Just phenomenal build. If I had the dedication, I would want to look like this guy.
dude, he's
And
built
he-
like a Puerto Rican god, dude.
Yeah,
Jason.
yeah. If you know Jason, you know how good this man looks.
Yeah, right.
And he invited me into leg day one day, and I legitimately could not walk by the end of it. I had to slide down the stairs, and I was like, dude, I'm never doing this with you again. And now it's a running joke between the two of us of every time
That's
he
great.
invites me to work out is to go work out legs.
Got to come back, man. Got to come back.
Hello, Chris. Hello, Sandals Church Espanol. Jumping in
Wow.
today.
I love it.
I don't
Who's
know who
that?
on our staff logged into the wrong account, but
Yeah.
we'll take it. We'll take the views.
Chicken tender legs. This guy. Yeah, Danny's very.
I am Jason.
That's right. Be careful who you choose to work out with. Jackson.
We also, guys, we're also streaming to Facebook today. So shout out to our Facebook audience. Hello, Facebook. How y'all doing?
Good to see
if
y'all.
You're getting this random stream. We are in a virtual book club, our way to engage with our online audience. We are reading through, where'd I put my book?
This book right here.
Fathered by God. It's the reverse form. But, excuse me, we're reading through
I
that
don't have
together as an
mine.
online campus. B-Way doesn't have his, but that's okay. If you want to join us, just pick up the copy of the book. We're going over chapters 2 and 3. We still have 3 more including this week. This is our 3rd week. We have 3 more weeks after this. Plenty of time to read along with us. It's a great read. Today, we are joined by a very special guest, Brian the Man Wade. B-Wade, how
Hello.
you doing today?
I'm good.
B-Wade, I've had the pleasure of working with you for several years now on the DMOC team. You are the epitome of the man behind the scenes wanting none of the recognition.
Mhm.
So we're going to
Yeah,
flex on the
no,
work
thank
you
you.
do right now. Can you give the people a little bit of insight in the work you do here at Sandals Church and for the online campus?
Yeah. So I handle distribution for YouTube. Kind of manage.
Sound like a
that.
drug dealer. I handle distribution.
I mean,
What's up
Yeah.
with Fredo? First he Ozempic, now drug dealing.
I love it. I love it.
Let
No,
this
yeah.
man
Sorry. B-Wade.
You're good. It's
B
cool. I
Wade
mean, I don't have to
ensures
talk.
that
It's
all of
fine.
our content gets out to the right people at the right time,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and is immensely thoughtful with all that stuff. So
Say
if it
wow.
wasn't for him, you would not see anything we actually do, and you would wonder, why do we have jobs at this church?
Yeah. Yeah. And I kind of found like a good passion of mine of just like capturing audio, editing audio.
Mhm.
Never thought I'd do that, but it's been a lot of fun. So yeah.
Cool. If
You are great to work with, man. You are
yes,
Thanks.
B-Wade is
kind.
tons of fun to hang out with, work with.
Yeah.
Probably
you.
one of the funniest people in the office if you're paying attention to what he says.
hmm
If you're not paying attention, you'll catch a stray, and it's hilarious every time.
It's incredible, man. You are, yeah. You're resourceful. You're strong. You're insightful, and you never have to prove any of those things. So it's a great quality about you, man. We're grateful to
Thank
have
you,
you.
dude.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
If you follow our podcast, the Sandals Church podcast, you've actually heard B. Wade's very angelic voice in all of our reflections during the image series, right?
Well, just one of them, not all of them.
Oh, just one?
I would
Oh.
never speak in all of them, dude. That's too much
I guess.
airtime for me, man.
I guess I just exposed the fact that I only listen to one of them. But that was B. Wade. You should listen to that one. You will feel very close to God as you hear him pray this meditation over you.
Yeah.
Scott, we're not going to address if that's the correct way to pronounce that word. I'm just going to let it roll. Let's see. I hope I pronounced this right way. Simbarashe.
Oh yeah.
Hello,
What's up,
my
man?
friend. Welcome to the stream.
Yeah. Good to see you.
How you doing today, Tim? Hello.
Flag thrown on the Fredsky rhetoric.
Chris G is saying you lulled him to sleep with your angelic podcast voice. So
That's cool.
Oh yeah, he's got a great voice.
I would take that as a
Great
compliment.
voice. Mhm.
All right, fellas, let's jump into this week's reading. Like I said earlier, we're reading Fathered by God by John Edlredge. We're discussing chapters 2 and 3. I have the titles here. I'm blanking on them right now. Chapter 2, True Son of a True Father. And then chapter 3, getting into boyhood, that first stage of the masculine journey. General thoughts, questions, insights as you guys read these two chapters this week.
I like the way that he positioned, the true son is one who is invited to go on a journey. This quote from page 26 was so good in connecting kind of life of a journey to kingdom. Jesus' description of the kingdom of heaven. He says the kingdom of heaven is an insightful picture of the masculine journey, and we can be greatly helped by pictures like this. Norman MacLean once wrote, "The nearest anyone can come to finding himself at any given age is to find a story that somehow tells him about himself." And I think that's so good. Like in other words, we live into the story that we tell ourselves. And so if we're on this journey of discovering who we are as men, then what a profound invitation to find yourself in a story that helps explain that to you,
Yeah.
And so I think that was good. And so to that point, he talks about the story you're invited into is first to understand that you are a son of a kind, strong, and engaged father, a father who's wise enough to guide you in the way, generous enough to provide for your journey, offering to walk with you every step. But then he makes this point that I think is really critical at the beginning stage as a foundational idea for us as people who are invited in. He says, this is perhaps, though, the hardest thing for us to believe, like really believe down deep in our hearts, so that it changes us forever, changes the way we approach each day. And then he kind of talks about the countless conversations he's had with men who struggle to believe that they are a son and that there is a father who is calling them to know him and to know yourself, And so I think that was right off the bat something that jumped out to me, because I think it is. Even as a pastor who preaches the gospel, one of the hardest things for me to do is to preach the gospel to myself, to actually believe it for myself. I can help other people believe it, understand it, explain it, live by it. But for whatever reason, there are moments where the hardest place to get through the gospel is just through the concrete of my own heart, And so I can really resonate with just the doubt that maybe lingers for men to truly understand that they are a son and that there is a father who is calling them. So I think it was just so important that he named that up front,
Yeah.
And then kind of countered it, though, that despite that doubt, it doesn't diminish the reality that God is in fact initiating us as his father, like as his son. He is the father. And so his initiation isn't dependent upon our ability to believe that he's initiating us, which I think is so important, because our feelings, our doubts can toss and turn by the day and by the situation, but that initial call of God the Father inviting us in, I think, is so critical to kind of have there at the foundation. So
yeah,
some thoughts.
I mean, leave it to Fredo to preach an entire sermon just off of his initial thoughts. That's great, though. I mean, yeah, that's such a profound telling of that need for us as men. I think John captured that really well in these beginning chapters. Before we dive too deep into that, Brian, I wanted to give you the chance. What are some things you took out of these chapters? What are you reflecting on through chapters 2 and 3?
Yeah, I mean, I know we had, like, I think Fredo say it earlier, but I was kind of thinking about, that him slipping notes under the door type of thing. I think that was his friend, right? But
that was in the boyhood section.
You
want to know that you're prized. Yeah, he tells that story.
Right. Yeah. And just being cognizant of that, like with my own son, and just because I know it's very easy for me to just be introverted and inside myself, just close off, or just go play video games, or go watch a TV show, or literally like anything, to disengage. And then so that just really, I don't know, that really hit home for me, because I don't want to be a dad like that. And I got great affirmation from my wife, and she was like, "You're not like that," and which is great. But I still I still want to be like really thoughtful in that, and not go that way, So
that's good, Brian. You're not alone in that fear too, I think, so even on like a best day, you could be like, wait, was I present in that moment? Did they share a story that like I wasn't like aware of, or did they ask like a deep question? And I was like, oh, that's great, honey. Put on your belt, put on your seatbelt,
But and I think that directly ties into like the whole point of a true son and a true father, is that thought and feeling of needing to be prized by your dad. You know what I mean? I like thinking through it as I was relating to my dad. Like, I have tons of memories of knowing, like, my dad thought the world of me in these situations, both with my dad and my grandfather, the two father figures I have. And then it made me start thinking already of Zion, who was 4 months old. I'm pretty sure he's not going to remember anything from this season of his life, but he's constantly soaking up everything around him in his new world. And that chapter 2 just kind of laid that groundwork for me of like, my son needs to know he is one of the most important things in my life, and how can I position myself to be present for him whenever he needs it. So
that's so good. That's good.
So we kind of discussed in our meeting before this, kind of talking about that, what it means to be prized by your father, what we're kind of looking for in that. I wanted to get into that a little bit more. Fredo, B-Wade, you guys both have kids that are a little bit older. What are some things you're thinking through, reading through this chapter, and now raising your sons to help create intentional moments like that?
Yeah, I mean, especially realizing that I have a son who is, in fact, in the stage of boyhood, right? Which is what chapter 3 is all on. So he's in that stage where he's exploring him, like the world, who he is. He wants to experience like powerful moments for himself. But as you said, he wants to know that he's prized and that he is like the apple of my eye. So one thing that I've been thinking through lately is asking him questions that help communicate that he is loved and prized. So just the other day, my wife Ashley had them both take like the 5 love language tests. Like it was just quick questions we asked them, and then it kind of generated some responses that were like pretty accurate to how they feel loved, So it was really helpful to think about what are the things I'm doing that specifically connect to his understanding of being prized and accepted as my son. And then just trying to ask questions that help him identify emotional aspects of his life. We talked last week about like having unfinished men, and so I think about my son, even as in the boyhood stage, like learning an emotional vocabulary for himself. so that when we go through situations or we have conversations, he can help identify, oh, when you said this to me, this is how I felt, or when I heard about this story, like this emotion came up, whether it's like fear or excitement, so trying to help him navigate through those things and giving him space to feel all of those things, because I want him to grow to become a whole person, not just an abrasive man, but like a well-rounded man who knows himself and knows how to connect with other people on that level too, so I think just trying to ask questions that frame up how he's feeling and if what I did connected to what he's thinking or wanting, so
yeah, that's good. B-Wade, to give you a moment to get back on the good Wi-Fi, because you got that Fredo Wi-Fi, let's go to one of Scott's questions in the chat. He said, how do not only feed our kids that are in the boyhood stage that he has loved and prized, but also protect them from things the world is telling them they are? I'm trying to translate the typos in the beginning.
Yeah.
Scott, help me out a little bit here. How do not only feed our kids, how do we teach our kids?
Yeah, that's what I'm guessing.
I think the question's good. I want to address that. I think you have some good insight on this, Fredo. Scott, bear with me. It's 4:45. It's been a long day.
Yeah, so I think, so Eli in the boyhood stage, there's a handful of things that the world sends his way in terms of messages that connect him to his identity and value. So he plays sports. He's actually like really good. He just has natural hand-eye coordination. He can shoot anything, kick anything, run after anything, swing at anything. Like he's naturally good at sports. But one of the messages of the world is that you're valued to the degree that you win, right? So we have to reframe winning and losing on a regular basis, because he's like his dad. He's competitive, and I cannot stand to lose, right? So I think regularly having conversations that reframe the message of that the world's telling him about winning and losing, especially because he's a big sports guy. Reframing the conversations that the world is saying about like his activities, like his freedom. So like gaming, right? He loves the game. He's all over Fortnite. You've played with him before too.
Yes.
So, not only like winning and losing in sports, but also winning and losing in that, and how he communicates to people. Like you're cool to the degree that everyone wants to play with you, and you have all this stuff. So helping retell the story that the world says, if you have access to this, like you got it going on, or if people want to play with you, you got it going on. So I think just identifying what those stories are and then reframing them, without a sense of guilt or shame, like shame on you for feeling that way, but just saying, hey, that is a way to view yourself, son, but I think there's something deeper that's going on. So you should think about kindness when you're in the chat, You should think about not talking every single second, because when you and I are playing Fortnite, like it's quiet, like we're saying a few things, right? When these kids are on there, bro, that is 183 headshot, what the Sigma, there's like 1,000 things they're saying. So I think just being observant of the stories that are already being told to him at a young age, and then kind of reframing them, so
yeah. Chat, for context, the full question what Scott was asking is, how do we both teach our kids that are in the boyhood stage that they are loved and prized, but also protect them from the things the world is telling them they are? Which is a great question, because kids today are more connected than they have ever been before with access to these games and stuff like that. I've even had the time of playing video games with Eli, and I hear him and his cousins talking to each other, and I'm like, all right, that's how it's gonna be. Like, I gotta remember I'm the adult in the room and not contribute. But there's the awareness of letting our kids know that they are prized and loved, and then also protecting them from the evil and sin that's in the world, because everyone is a sinner, and kids are some of the meanest people around.
And sometimes they judge each other based on what they know or don't know, right? So like if he knows this song that came out, or if he knows what this phrase means, or if he knows what this dance move is, right? And so sometimes I have to just be very blunt and say, son, at one point when you're older, I will tell you about this, right? So case in point, this will be like a little bit full disclosure. As a hip hop head, I listen to a ton of Eminem, a lot of Marshall Mathers, a lot of Slim Shady. So he's playing Fortnite, and like they have like a portion of the song that's on there, and so he thinks it's kind of cool that him and his friends, I'm the real Slim Shady, I'm like, son, please, let me, I will explain this to you.
Right.
But in order to protect him, there'll be an appropriate time in his life when he's ready to have a conversation around hip hop and, you know, Marshall's take on it and the use of some of the heavier stuff that he talks about, right? And so I think, yeah, even just protecting him from, it doesn't mean you're the coolest kid because you know what it's saying or because you know the move, you know. So I think even there's a way in which kids think like access means you're cool, or if you know what's cool, then you know you're accepted here. So it's
Yeah.
a challenge for sure.
Yeah. Brian, how would you say with your son you balance that, you know, teaching them they are loved and prized, but also kind of protecting them from some of the things? Because even as the online youth lead, one of my students is only 11 years old, and in this space he's interacting with students that are 16, 17, almost 18-year-olds. And so I'm like, okay, what is my role here to let you be a part of this bigger church community, but also maybe protect you from some of the things that you're not ready to handle or address, or some of the feelings you might feel if you're left out of a joke simply because you're too young to have experienced these other things that these students have gotten to experience.
Is this Tyler's question?
This is a continuation of
Still Brian,
Scott's question
Scott's
of
question.
how do we both teach our kids that are in the boyhood stage that they are loved and prized, but also protect them from the things the world is telling them they are.
Oh, got you.
And Tyler, we will get to your question next. I haven't missed that one.
I don't know if like, because a lot of the people in his life are very kind. Like, oddly enough, at least in my opinion, it's very odd because a lot of his friends and even the classmates that he have are like very, very supportive and encouraging, which is just crazy to me because they like, I don't know, they genuinely like don't talk, like make fun of each other, stuff like that. Or if they do, like they try to they talk about it, which is like just not something I'd be used to at that young of an age. So yeah, I don't know, that's kind of difficult for me to answer, to be completely honest.
That's fair. I think there's freedom in that too. You know, as we're all dads figuring that out, I think there's room for that availability of being like, yeah, I don't totally have this figured out yet because this isn't the exact situation I'm in.
Yeah. And I think that's maybe part of Eldridge's point was like in the boyhood stage, you want to encourage exploration. You want to encourage adventure. You want to encourage environments where they can experience power, you know, even in conversations with their friends and stuff like that. But I think it's just guiding them, you know, being that sage, that loving presence to them in the midst of like them exploring all the wonder of the world, you know. So
yeah, definitely. Well, cool. Thank you, guys. Let's transition a little bit into Tyler's question. Tyler asked, how do you balance trying/wanting to be good at work with making your kids feel like they are more important to you?
Y'all, this is so critical. And I'm actually really glad Tyler asked this because it's something that I've been thinking about in my own life because I'm noticing a convergence, big word here, of two like parallel things happening in my life. One of them being I'm starting to hit a peak where like I feel like a lot of gears are turning where I can professionally do a lot of output, right? And produce a lot, do well in a lot of things. And so like I feel like the steam, you know, kind of gearing up, like the train's full speed, right? And it's exciting because I feel like I'm tapping into what I was made to do and who I was designed to be. And at the same time, that is happening right at a stage where my kids need me to be very present to them, right? So it's like no accident that these two open doors are happening. The open door of me needing to be a present father and the open door of me having immense potential when it comes to my professional and work life. And so I feel this tension currently right now as a dad of what that looks like to manage that, you know. Even down to someone last week in the lobby of our church asking, hey, do you think you'd ever like get your doctorate or your PhD, you know, which is a good question. I've actually thought about that for a long time. Like, would I go back to school? But the truth is, I don't want to lose and miss out on the next 8 years of my kid's life because I've been writing 800 pages of God knows what, you know? So like, there's some things that I have to say no to, you know, for the sake of not missing out on a really critical point of my kids' lives. And so I don't know if there's so much a balance, Tyler. I think maybe the balance is discerning what are the big no's and what are some of the ambitions that need to pass away, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But then even real practically, we were talking about this before we jumped on, like I'm trying to do more of my work in front of them, right? So at my home, I don't have an office. I don't have like a home office that I can retreat to, which
Mm-hmm.
leads me to have to do a lot of my work at the dining room table or in the kitchen or in the living room. But what I'm noticing is it's like really helpful because I get to just be around them more. And
Yeah.
I'm trying to just have a policy of I can be interrupted, you know, and if I
Mm-hmm.
need uninterrupted time, then I got to leave the house for that. But so there's kind of a beauty in that. And that's like wisdom I picked up hearing Tim Keller talk about that years ago when he said he would try to do the small things around his kids so that it wouldn't take him away from them, you know, even if it was
Mm-hmm.
small things that contributed to larger parts of his work, whether his preaching ministry, his pastoral ministry, his writing ministry, you know. So yeah.
That's
But,
good.
yeah.
Yeah, the office conversation is interesting because I mean, Viv and I are lucky enough to have a space that is an office. And Viv also works from home, and as a therapist, she needs a secluded office space for confidentiality reasons. And so I'm in the same boat of, again, I'm thinking way ahead because Zion's 4. He really does, or he's 4 months old. I'm gonna blink and he's gonna be 4. He's 4 months old,
Then your boy's
and
4.
I can be very honest with, like, I'm not the most important thing in his life because I'm not feeding him. But if I'm working from home, how can I position myself basically like you're saying, Fredo, of being able to be interrupted and finding the right time to say, like, okay, I really need to dial this down. But also still being available for my son to know that he has full access to me.
Yeah.
Like we were talking, I think it's in the boyhood chapter, but his friend shared the story of his dad that was a workaholic. And had an office and the door was always closed to him. I couldn't find it in the book. I was trying to get the exact page, but this boy would slide notes underneath the door to his dad. And to him, he never got them responded, like not even sure if his dad noticed him.
Yeah.
So that was a very telling thing to me where I love my job. I love getting to work with students and work with the youth of our church, but I can't let that take away from like my bigger task of raising my son. So that's when I turn to very old sages like Fredo to say, hey, how do we figure this out?
Well, easy on two things. Easy on very old and easy on sage. You know, I'm a wizard in training. So you're a wizard, Harry.
What do you think, B-Wade? What are you kind of going back and forth on? Because I know you also have an office space, and this will kind of lead into a follow-up question I had for you guys in our meeting before this, but I kind of want to hear your thoughts first, Fredo, or B-Wade.
Yeah. I generally leave my door open. Just because I don't know. I've been wanting to hide stuff, you know, and I don't want to be that kind of person. So I leave my door open so my wife or Oliver can come in at any point. Unless it's like an actual serious meeting and I need to just like close the door, but that's very rare. So, yeah, I generally just try to do that. But I mean, like, in a sense of like balance and trying to juggle those things, I'm not like a very high 3, so I'm not super ambitious about stuff. Like if I find if I find something I love, like I'll like get into it. But I think it's more of like not like losing myself to like a good story and like a you know, because video games are great. So there's a lot of great stories out there that I get lost in. So it's more of that as opposed to like a professional standpoint of just trying to balance like, okay, like this game is not that important, so I need to put it down. Even though I love it, like I love my son more, and so it's like, yeah, just trying to be like very like self-aware and introspective in those times, and it's far easier said than done sometimes, but it's just having that just constant battle of, again, introvert and trying to be giving to my son. So
yeah definitely, that was going to be kind of the follow-up question to this. Fredo, you consider yourself a recovering introvert. B-Wade, you and I are very open and upfront about our introversion.
yeah.
So how would you guys encourage or maybe give advice to dads that are more introverted and feel the pull to a closed door versus being actively involved when things get tough? I mean, I've already experienced that of like, I'm tired, I just want to shut out to the world and not interact. But that's not always the healthiest thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think, man, reintroducing the practice of stillness and silence as a kind of prayer is so life-giving. I mean, sometimes it's joked about that kind of prayer is just, it's easier to do if you're an introvert. But I do think it's also neglected by a lot of people in general. And so recovering that practice as a form of prayer could be immensely helpful just for the way you're wired, for you to just bear yourself before God in a really in a really filling and restorative kind of way, where you just allow God to love you, to see you as you are, without the pressure to say things, to ask for things, but just to be present to Him. It's been maybe one of the primary practices that I think has kept me grounded in this last season of my life, and along with some time to rest, actually building in a consistent practice of breaking away from work, resting, worshiping, doing fun recreational stuff with my family, I think has also been another practice that in a lot of ways is just neglected, especially in larger evangelical circles where we don't really have a consistent voice on stillness. I think it's coming back in more of like the more recent wave of formation in the church again. So, but even Sabbath too. Sabbath is not consistently talked about, right? Like we're very clear about going to church, reading your Bible, praying, giving, and obeying the teachings of Jesus. But we're not always clear on how that's done on a simple, ordinary basis, And so I think for introverts who are wanting to be very present and not escape, consider how some of those spiritual disciplines might serve the way that you're wired right now, and actually might allow you to give the best of yourself to your children.
Yeah.
So.
That's good. That's good. One of the things. Say it. Well, I'm just trying to think of a good follow-up. But one of the things I've done for some time now is my commute to and from the office is generally about 15. If there's traffic, about 20 minutes. And normally, music, podcast, whatever the next thing to ingest is what I'm listening to. And a few times of the week during one of those drives, either to work or on the way home from work, I'll turn the radio off and have nothing playing, no headphones, no music, and just kind of let the quietness of a drive be a moment to recharge. And I think that's kind of what you're getting at, Fredo, the practice of stillness of I'm still doing something, but instead of filling the moments I have to myself with the next thing to do, it's a time to just kind of sit and be with God in that. I would love to say I pray every time I'm in those moments, but that's not the case. Sometimes it's just autopilot, get me home and give me the energy to finish out this night. And then other times it's deeply moving and I feel God, kind of working on something in me. But I think that's a great space and a reasonable way to bring stillness into your everyday life.
Yeah. Yeah. Scott's got some great questions, man. John Edlredge talks about the importance of a boy feeling like he has what it takes. Have you guys ever experienced feeling like you don't have what it takes and feeling like a boy again? Oh my gosh, yeah. Brian, any thoughts? You go first, Brian. Tell us how you don't feel like you have what it takes.
That's like every day for me, man.
Any day that ends in Y.
Yeah,
pretty much.
Yeah, no. I guess to give a deeper answer to that, yeah, I guess I would say that I felt like that a lot, even just working here. I think we do overall work with a lot of like I don't know, very gifted people. So yeah, that whole like imposter syndrome, I feel that quite a bit. Maybe not so much anymore. I feel like there's a lot of people that have kind of spoken into my life and talk those negative voices down quite a bit. But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of that comes from like growing up and not having a lot of positive voices in my life. But over time, obviously that's changed. But yeah, I think, and then wanting to be that for my son, like it's still discipline, but like just try and be positive. It's difficult, but yeah, I feel that for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I sensed it just yesterday. It's Monday night. We wrapped our online Bible study. We were trying to cook dinner, do homework, all in time before my parents got there to watch the kids, so we can go to like our community group. And looking at all the work that Eli had to do for math, I'm like, I don't have what it takes to help him right now, and not lose my mind, And so, yeah, so I can totally see your point on the work scenario and even in the home scenario at times. Like, dude, I don't have it in me right now. I just don't have it in me to mitigate this fight. I don't know what mitigate is, but
New words with Fredo.
I don't have it in me to ask them to clean their room anymore. So I think I'm wondering, Scott, as you asked that question, because I think it's a regular experience, at least for me, and it may be my gap of sanctification that is massive right now in my life. It's more of a regular experience. And I'm wondering if some of it is actually a healthy thing, in the sense that it leads you to look beyond yourself for help, right? So part of the great beauties of being a true son of a true father is that you get to go on this journey, but you don't have to do it by yourself. You're invited to go on the journey with the Father who's with you. And so I think in those moments where you're feeling like you don't have what it takes, it becomes a moment to ask the Spirit of God to overtake your mind, overtake your heart, overtake your body, right? And recharge you for what you need. God do in me and through me what I cannot do in myself, and God do through me what I can't do through myself right now. I think those are holy prayers in the moment of kind of feeling like you don't have what it takes. And yeah, that even happens as a grown man at 38 with a wife, 2 kids, settled down career, got a home, 2 cars, right? Closet of shoes, and all kinds of rec league banners to hang in my house. I've achieved a lot. But yeah, still find myself like as a boy, or when it comes to even just, last week we talked a lot about trying to fix things or learning how to fix things, and wondering like, dang man, I can't hang curtains, and I like come from a line of people who like planted vineyards or like built engines for like aircrafts that went to war, like, and I can't build an IKEA desk, like so. It's just yeah, I think it's a regular occurrence for sure, at least in my life. So, but wondering if there's a gift in that because of the invitation to depend on God.
Yeah. I think you're on to something good there, Fredo. Not saying that I've done this perfectly, but reflecting on this last year after going back to work from being off for paternity leave, getting back into the swing of full-time work, I felt behind because of the time I took off and it coming like right into the camp season. That led to obviously just a lot of fights between Viv and I as we navigated newborn life, me working all the time while also trying to be present and helpful at home. And I remember one particular fight, I was like, I can't do this. I can't, like, I'm not enough in these situations. And I felt like a boy because it led to us like, hey, maybe we should get some marriage counseling. And you would think, being the kid in therapy, I'd be like, oh yeah, totally. But I was like, no, we don't we don't need that. Like, we're fine, because it still felt like I was falling short and I didn't have what it takes. Now, some sessions later, some time to like reflect on that time, I can see the beauty of it, of like, it gave an opportunity to invite God into my life again to do a different kind of work. I was seeing it as like, oh, if I just accomplish all of these things, if I, fix it, quote unquote, will be okay. And it was just it was a comforting, it was an uncomfortable but comforting reminder of like, this is all through God, and He's still working on and refining me in this process. So while that boy feeling isn't great, it kind of just, again, points me back to God and the idea that we are continually being fathered by Him. It's not easy, but it can be a very beautiful thing when we actually lean into it and realize the limits of ourselves and where God actually can heal us in that. So
yeah, that's good. I love that phrase, man. The limits to ourselves. That's great. So good.
Let's get into a couple more Scott's questions because he dropped in heater after heater. He asked, "How do you think unaddressed wounds from boyhood affect a man's life and relationships?"
Yeah, Eldridge talks about that I think towards the end of his boyhood chapter, he talks about the wounds that come. And yeah, he gave a great story. I felt like every paragraph he'd drop a nugget, and then here's a story to go along with the nugget.
Yeah.
But yeah, he did
starts
talk
on
about
page 52. He starts the wounded section, and that kind of leads us through basically the end of the chapter.
Yeah, and I think that he talks about that fear of the lie that settles deep in your heart that you are on your own, a boy without a father in a dangerous world, the days of the beloved son cut off, and I never knew why. Perhaps it was something I did. Perhaps I could have prevented it. So yeah, I think part of the reality of living in a broken world is no matter how good of a parent you attempt to be, it is bound to happen that your children end up with wounds. Like it's just bound to happen, even more so if you try to prevent it. Like if you work really, really hard to prevent it, sometimes those wounds are even worse, but I think even as a dad right now, just being settled with the fact that my children will have wounds, some of those wounds will be wounds that I inflicted. What's important, Scott, to your question, how do you think unaddressed wounds from boyhood affect a man's life? I would say this part of, I think the way that we might start to see that is in their anger and in their rage, and their inability to connect with themselves, which is seen in their inability to connect with other people, right? So oftentimes the rage, like especially the rage we see in the West today, and the way that people identify with groups over particular issues, right? Whether it's political issues, other social issues, like there's just an anger, like a flood of anger. And I'm wondering if beneath all that is just an unaddressed wound, and particularly like a father wound, So I think that certainly is a major effect on a man's life that we see today in the world. And so I think one way to actually just address that is to just name it for what it is early on. Like, man, I'm so sorry, I'm going to hurt you. But the sorry if it sounds like that.
Sorry, I immediately went to Deadpool. Like I'm thinking when Wolverine and Deadpool are arguing, and Deadpool's like, "I'm gonna punch you now." Like that's just what I thought. But sorry, you were on to something good there. That's my bad.
No, you're good. Yeah, I was just gonna say just knowing ahead of time that the wounds will happen. I will sin against my children. But the grace of God runs deeper, and his transformative power cannot outpace my ability to let my kids down, which is pretty great. But his transformative power is outpacing it tenfold, 100-fold even, and so I think naming it for what it is in order to get to that transformative place earlier on, and help them work through those things. So, and then, maybe be ready to help write a check once in a while for their counseling at some point later on down the road. But also, I would say this is also another great place for wounds to be dealt with, is leaning into the counsel of other men that we have in our lives. All right. So, for example, I'm really grateful that Eli and Ellie get to grow up with like a multi-generational community, in that there's friends that they follow that are my age. There's friends that we have that are older than us. So, and they get to be exposed to them too. So I think just giving them a council of leaders that might help them navigate through those particular woundings and issues, I think is really helpful, because all my friends have different approaches to how they deal with a problem, right? Or coach through reconciliation, or give advice into certain moments, right? And so I'm very appreciative that it's just not my voice over and over they're hearing, but they're hearing from a council of dads. And in a lot of ways that might prevent some of the unnecessary wounds that come along the way. So yeah, those are my 2 cents.
That's great.
Dang.
I'm floored listening to you talk. But
yeah,
B Wade, you and I kind of talked about it in relating to this type of topic, is sometimes not all wounds are massive, Sometimes those unaddressed wounds are smaller things that we're like, no, that's really not that big of a deal. I just need to get over it. Man up, for lack of a better term. And as we're kind of talking through this, sometimes I think of like even the smallest wounds can become infected if you don't address them and take care of them properly, clean it out, and give it the treatment it needs to heal. So even if it starts as a potentially small wound, if it's not addressed, it becomes something very big and harmful. So the awareness for men, both young and old, to say like, hey, I need to be aware that there might be some wounding in my life that I need healing from, and being okay with stepping into that and allowing those wounds to heal. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that?
That's good. He's thinking.
Oh, his internet keeps going.
His internet is that?
We might have
Okay.
lost some of that.
Yeah.
No worries.
You know what, McKay, as you were thinking or Sharon,
I have one more question after this I want to answer before we end the stream, but go ahead.
Yeah, so because I feel like what you just shared right now kind of is similar to what Zach is asking in the chat around. Do you have any thoughts on how we should address the wounds? Is that kind of what you were getting at too?
Yeah, that was the question I was going to get at. That was the question.
Yeah.
Shout out to Zach on Facebook. Also, hello, Oscar Sandals Fresno.
Yeah, what's up, Oscar? Good to see you, man. Thanks for joining us. But yeah, so I think how we maybe address those wounds, knowing that my kids are 10 and 6, I have to figure out what's appropriate for their developmental stage. So part of that means that I do have the freedom to confess things that I have done to them, and specifically say, Daddy got upset, and can you tell me how that hurt your feelings? Like, what did I say? When I said this, how did it make you feel? That way, it's not a generic apology. Hey, I'm sorry for losing it again. But like when I said this, what did you make? Would you feel sad? Are you sad because I'm not happy that you didn't clean your room or whatever? Whatever the case is. Like, so I think just walking out with them, the very specific things that I did, and how it's made them feel, so that I can apologize specifically, remind them that there's grace in Jesus, that this is partly actually why Jesus died, to forgive us. And because he's forgiven you, you have that power to forgive on your time when you're ready, So I'll even say to them, like, just because I'm apologizing doesn't mean you have to say I forgive you right away. You can say it when you're ready to say it. I think that's been something helpful lately, because I'm usually one that's just like quick to forgive, but that's also because I have just a default setting that forgiveness is cheap, and I think we run the risk of that in Christian circles as we apply the gospel, which is good. We could do so in a way in which forgiveness feels cheap and apologies feel cheap, so trying to be specific with what I did that hurt them, so they can say how they're feeling through it, but then also giving them the time they need to just say, Daddy, I forgive you.
Yeah.
And yeah, so
yeah, and giving them the space to actually genuinely feel and think through what it means to forgive someone, because I've also been in a position where you say I forgive you quickly because that's the good Christian thing to do, without thinking through and understanding what that forgiveness actually means. Yeah, I think that's super helpful. Yeah. Brian, I don't know how much you heard or what you cut out, but we're addressing Zach's question of, do you have any thoughts on how we should address the wounds we have caused in our kids? It's kind of what we're discussing.
Yeah.
8-Bit Dad gave a great comment. They said the power of saying I'm sorry to my kids and giving him space to process it with me has changed our relationship. So, my son.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's a good word. Yeah. So good.
Well, cool. I think,
all right.
I think we could wrap it there then. Unless you guys have any other thoughts, questions, concerns, lasting implications from this week's reading.
Man, I'm just still thinking about what 8-Bit Dad had shared around how it has changed the relationship, and I would imagine it will continue to do so in just a profoundly beautiful way, because your children are now seeing that you're humble enough to admit your own mistakes, and I'm trying to be more keenly aware of that, even as a pastor, that I don't just talk about what I do, but I like embody it in my own life with my kids, and so there's a freedom they see. I can confess sin to them, and they can see that and learn to strengthen our trust. Like we there's a bond that happens through that, so there's a stronger reconciliation there. So yeah.
Sorry, we do have one more question. I'm sorry, Scott. I apologize for missing this one. His last question: if you could go back and give your boyhood self any advice or encouragement, what would you say?
Oh, this is good. B. Wade. Hopefully your internet is not out.
I would tell I would tell my younger self to invest in the housing market before the crash, so that way I'm not screwed out of a house.
Yeah, man,
No,
for
and
real.
in all seriousness, I'll go first. In all seriousness, I would encourage my younger self to not focus on what other people think of me and really embody what my dad and my grandpa spoke over me and what I've learned from church. I went to church all the time, but I was also in public school, so I kind of bounced in between. I want to be the good Christian kid, but I want to be accepted by my friends, and that led me to some real self-doubt and some real questionable decisions that caused a lot of pain in my life. So I would just encourage myself to stay grounded in who my family's raised me to be and the positive things that were spoken over my life, because I doubted a lot of those things for a good period of time.
Man, that's good. That's good. Do you wait any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I actually just went through something like this in counseling. But it's just, I think it'd just be a lot of affirmation and kind words, of like, that you're a lot stronger than you think you are,
Yes.
you're
Yes.
that kind of stuff, and like, you are more capable, like just fighting any doubts that have come up over the years, those kind of things.
So good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. I love that, B Wade. Yeah, to piggyback, as they say. Yeah, things I would say to my younger self in that boyhood stage would for sure be to continue to press in and do the hard thing and just be open and surprised by the results. I found myself often as a young boy resisting the pressures of difficulty, and pushing through, even down like the small things of like, I'm playing a video game, just give me the cheat codes, like, let me just type in left, 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 up, 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 right, 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 triangle, 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 circle, boom, infinite health or infinite hell or whatever. Like, so I just had like this hardwired statement that like hard things are not for me. And so I would love to go back and press into that more. So, and also maybe another one too would just be not viewing everything as so funny. I think I wasted some early years because if it wasn't funny and didn't make me feel good, I didn't want to explore it. And I think there is for sure a time to relax and to laugh. I think that is a gift from God, no doubt. But sometimes if it's overindulged in, it can keep you from the things in life that are so important, that are forming to your character. So I think I would press into hard things where I was resistant to them, and not just kind of lean into just what made me feel good and laugh, and maybe give myself to things that are more formidable for me. So
yeah.
I know we're getting close to wrapping up, but this is such a great thought from, I believe, Esau Jimenez. Thank you so much for joining us. And he writes, how do you deal with your teenagers who are experimenting with drugs and won't tell you the truth? I don't have teenagers, but I do have a close family member who has been defined by this in a significant part of their life. And so, as someone who's done what I can to be present to them, Esau, I would say this: there is a kind of love that that how would I say this? There is a way that you love them in the way that you die to their decisions. Meaning, when you look at Luke 15 and Jesus tells the parable of the prodigal son, which is really the prodigal sons, there's two sons that are lost. There's three deaths that take place. The first is the death of the father. In other words, in order for that son to go and live his life of indulgence and pleasure, the father essentially dies, giving him his inheritance, right? So there's a death. There's a way in which you separate, you empty yourself, and you release them into what they most desire to do. Because the truth is, I don't know your exact situation, but I would imagine at some level, your best advice lands on deaf ears. And that's a kind of death, right, that you experience and that you have to release yourself to. But then even through that, you still position yourself to be ready for their return. Because the second death that we see in that story that Jesus tells about the wayward son, prodigal son, however you want to phrase it, is the death of the fattened calf. So when the son returns, the father is there ready to embrace him. He's dirty, yet he still hugs him, puts the best cloak on him, gives him the ring, and then he kills the fattened calf and said, we're going to celebrate, right? So there's a second death. And then really the other death that we see is the death of the younger son, who's like, you know what? I don't like this life anymore, So I think Esau, there's a way to pray, not that they would just stop what they're doing, but that what they're doing would lead them to a place of desperation. Like there's a way to love them in the way that you pray for their desperation to come quickly, and for the way that God allows consequences to happen to rock them to the core, so that they are sitting in that pig pen of a mess and they're like, man, my father's animals eat better than this. Like, what am I doing? So I think there's a way for you to love them, and release them into what they're doing, especially if they're at a point where they're not telling you the truth. So there's now that breakdown of communication. There's a breakdown of trust, right? And so I think depending on where they're at in life, how old they are, if they're living under your roof, it's very different. But if it continues beyond their life as a teenager, and into their young adult life, there is a kind of dying that releases them into the foolishness, and a prayer that goes with them, that God, would that foolishness lead them to a desperation, and a desperation where they could be met by your love, by your power, and by my open arms and readiness to be there for them. So those would be some thoughts.
Yeah. Esau, thank you for jumping in and sharing that. I know, like Fredo said, we don't know the full scope of your situation. Before I answer, I want to say, if you want to chat with Fredo or myself or Brian, you could email us online at sandalschurch.com. We'd love to connect with you. My experience working with teens at church, granted, I'm not their parent, so it's probably even easier for them to lie to me, and you can very easily see the lie when they're explaining it. I mean, I echo what Fredo was saying of like that prayer and that love for your kids is requires a certain amount of release. I would say if this teen is still living in your house, then yes, you are the parent. Whether they're telling the truth or not, you have to set those ground rules, and that's going to make things very challenging. But if they are out and experiencing life in their own way, yeah, I just echo what Fredo's saying. And I'm trusting and believing that God will intervene in your child's life, and there will be that moment of reconciliation. But the hardest part is trusting in the Lord in that time, and allowing the Lord to work through you in this season as well. That won't be easy, and we would love to support you in that process, but know that your church is praying for you and with you.
Yeah. Amen. Yeah. Amen. May they come home soon, man. May they come home soon.
Actually, Fredo, let's end the stream today praying for Esau. Would you mind taking the lead on that?
Yeah, for sure. Let's do it. God, we do come before you with a gratitude, with a heart that says thank you for being a God who pursues us, and a God who is ready to open your arms to us when we come home and when we need forgiveness. And we pray that this would happen very quickly for Esau and his children. Whatever the situation is, may there be a desperation in his soul that gives him just enough wisdom to say no to the things that are destroying him, and say yes to the advice of his dad, say yes to the advice and counsel of his family. And may through that, yes, he find the love of Jesus for him once again. And so, God, we pray for a break of whatever addiction might be there. We pray for a new bridge to be built of trust and of communication between Esau and his children. And yeah, God, may you do this quickly in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you. I'm a member from Azusa. Oh, that's beautiful, Esau. If you need help getting more connected, like we can definitely help you out with that. Yeah, definitely. Chat, friends, family, thank you so much for joining the stream. We will be back next Thursday, 4:30 California time, discussing chapters 4 and 5. Fredo and I will be joined by another guest. I forget who I have on next week.
B Wade, it's been a pleasure, bro. Thank you, man.
B Wade, yeah, thank you so
Thank
much
you for
being
being
here.
with us.
Thank you, guys.
Facebook, YouTube, we love you guys. We're praying for you.